Okay, cool. My system is slow, so I'm trying to get to the Google Drive. I guess the one of the big things that I was going to bring up, and now's as good a time as any. Does everyone have access to the Google Drive that has the referee materials? So let's do it this.
Is that the one that I set up, Rich, on ASU?
Yes.
Okay, the one that's called referee resources. So here's what we're going to do, you guys. Share, copy link. It's going in the chat.
Perfect.
There you go. And anyone who doesn't have access, I should be seeing requests popping up in my email, I believe.
I just sent a request.
Okay.
I don't have access either.
Okay, go for it, you guys. You'll have access in 2 seconds here as soon as they start popping up. Oh, I wonder if I can do it.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
I'll go ahead and start. I think we've got a good bunch here. I recognize quite a few of the names on that I'm seeing on the board, so that's awesome. And I think we've got the major head referees, at least for the upcoming event. Alex isn't going to be with us tonight. He's at school, but he's here in spirit. So I'll start off as I always do, and thank you all for everything you're doing for FIRST. I appreciate your support. I appreciate the time you're giving, the dedication, and what's about to come. So I hope you all had a great Thanksgiving. I was up in New Hampshire and thoroughly enjoyed it, and really looking forward to this season. So the big thing that I want to put out on the masterpiece season, like anything else, have fun, enjoy it, and don't read too much into the rules. I think that pretty much goes without saying. If you've done this before, you know how it works. But the overall, I think the season, what I've been seeing, what I've been hearing, talking to coaches, and just as I review things, is it's pretty straightforward this season. I think the missions are, in some cases, very doable for new teams. In other cases, some good challenges that'll, like always, the game design committee does a good job of balancing it out. The rules are pretty easy to digest for the younger teams, I think, this year, and they haven't changed a whole lot from last year, I saw, but probably the biggest one is some more definition, especially when it comes time to set up and how you have your technicians on the table. So last year was kind of kept pretty loose and wasn't as defined at the beginning, in that you could actually have the team on one side and one technician on the other side. This year, if you've got, you basically have to keep both sides balanced for technicians at the table. So if you've got 4 or more, you need to have 2 technicians on each side of the table. And then from there, however the team wants to divide on the sides for the match.
And also, so when the people divide, they divide, right?
Correct.
So you can't have somebody sitting in the back, standing on one side and then standing on another, and then going up to be a technician over here, standing back and going over to another, going up to be a technician over there. I split mine. When I did it last year, I split them. You have to stay here, or you guys stay here, you guys stay there. You can't talk to each other. You can't go back and forth.
That is correct. And I was getting a whole lot of audio problems on that one. Was anybody else having audio issues? Like, I could hear the majority of what Brad was saying. Did everyone else hear him fine?
Sounded good.
I could hear him fine.
Emily heard me.
Okay. I am going to see if I can clean up my system here, because obviously I'm having system issues. So yes, Brad, you are correct in all that you were saying about once you're selected a side for the match, you stay on that side, and that's that. But if teams ask, and I have had some coaches ask about, okay, if in the next match they want to be on a different side, is that acceptable? Yes, that is completely acceptable. Mm-hmm. So it's just once you split and once you start the match, there's no flipping sides and all that.
So another thing I think was a big change from last year is last year when you launched a robot from side A and then you had to interrupt the robot, you had to bring it back to side A.
That's different.
And that's different this year. Now you can send it out from side A, and if you interrupt, you can interrupt from side B and pull it back.
And the big thing there is if it's launched from side A, and as long as it's completely in the field, side A can interrupt it and hand it to side B without it going back into
Oh.
side A for the launch. And
Side B cannot interrupt?
side B can interrupt also.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. So basically, yeah, a scenario being side A starts it and it goes and it does the 3D dragon, activates that model, and then they decide, okay, we don't want it to go all the way to side B to get the next one, and they take the penalty, they interrupt it. The side A people interrupt it, pass it over to side B, and get it over to side B quicker for the launch.
Right.
That's the strategic value I see in that.
Right.
And
they can only do that once they interrupt it. Once they bring it back to their home and are preparing to launch, they can't then hand it over to side B.
Correct. That is correct.
Yep.
Dan, go ahead with your question.
I hope you can hear me. Can you hear
I
me?
can.
Okay. I thought I heard you say they could not talk or communicate from side A to side B.
They can communicate. They just
Okay.
can't pass any notes. They can't pass any models. They can't pass any thing. But they can talk to each other, and they can encourage each other or kind of strategize. But they can't pass stuff.
Right. Yeah. So if side A has a module that's needed on side B, that's tough.
The robot has to deliver it.
The robot has to deliver. Yes.
Right. They can communicate back and forth, but
Yep.
they cannot hand things.
Correct.
Other than the robot in the case where Rich just explained, right?
Yep.
Got it.
So other than that, some of the other things there is a new update on the board as of I think it was sometime in the last week or so.
Oh.
But all it does is just clarify what's already in the rules about mission models cannot be locked on to equipment. They've got to be easily detached. And
Mhm.
when they're detached, they can't be broken. So again, it reinforces what's already in the rules about the attaching models to equipment.
Mhm.
And that's kind of, I think, one of the drivers on that. We're dealing with the experts that have their loops and minifigures on the little plate that becomes very easily detached. And that's one of the points I wanted to recommend for all the referees is I'm going to try and do it on every match. Make sure all the experts, or go over with the field reset crew, all the experts, make sure you're pushing down on the expert to make sure they're locked onto the plate. Because I have had a couple of teams in the scrimmage that we know how they handle the mission models, and they throw them into a box that's their piece of equipment to deliver. And in doing so, those minifigures easily pop off the base. So that's one where look at it again, applying the right call versus the correct call and the benefit of the doubt. If a team is obviously, I'll say, mishandling the model, treating them roughly in their excitement, then that's one where the referees should be talking to them at the end when they're scoring, and maybe the first match or the practice go, okay, we're going to give it to you this time, but you really need to work on control and not just throw the models around. Because if you throw the models around, they're going to get broken like you just saw here. And by the rules, if you break a model, that does not score. We don't want to do that to you. So make sure you're handling those models well. And I think that's one of the game plays that we as referees can really pass on to the teams is calm down. You've got 2.5 minutes, which seems like a short period of time, but it's really a long period of time. And don't go damaging the models in your haste to do something. You know, so that's a dialogue that I can see happening numerous times throughout the matches. So something for the head referees, just pass on to your referee crew, and also, like I said, the field reset team. That's a big one. Any other questions that you guys might have on areas that you want to take the discussion?
One of the things that in the referee talk that came out from first was what comes back after a robot is interrupted. And if something breaks off of the robot, they can bring everything right there. They can bring it back. But if something breaks off and is left out there and the robot goes on and does other things, then it has to stay on the field. Is that correct?
I am looking back in let's see. If a piece of equipment or a mission model is dropped off, and this is page 20 during the match, outside home, number 2. Wait for it to come to rest. If it's completely outside home, it stays as is unless the robot moves. And that's a piece of equipment or a mission model. Partly inside, it stays as is unless the robot moves it. Now, they can remove it by hand, but if it's a piece of equipment, it can be taken back to the home area, but they lose a precision token.
Okay.
And that's partly in home. Let me just.
If it's completely outside of home, they have to leave it though, right?
That's what it says here. Completely outside home, it stays as is unless the robot moves it.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, so the referee made I think in his little discussion, made a big deal out of the fact that if the robot crashes into something and part of the robot breaks that wasn't supposed to break and they reach out to interrupt it, they can obviously bring back everything, even, give them the benefit of the doubt kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
But if they meant to drop it off, they can't pick it up.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
And one of the other, speaking of the interruptions and what happens when you interrupt, remember that whenever they interrupt, if their interruption affects the scoring of a model, then that score is invalid.
Right.
So if they change the score from a score to a non-score, of course it's non-scored. If they change it from non-scored to scored, then it can, it won't count. Mm-hmm. Unless they act on that model again and prove that it works, in which case you can give them the benefit of the doubt. One of the things that I had a discussion with, or one of the missions, was that 3D model, the dragon, right outside of the red home base. And a couple of the coaches, we were talking and they were talking amongst themselves, and I overheard one coach go, yeah, you have to interact with the models in the field. You can't go into home and activate the model from home. And
you can.
Exactly. It's like, don't read too much. Remember your assumptions. Don't read too much into the rules, because as long as the team is not touching the robot or any of its attachments, any of its equipment, the robot can do whatever it wants from the launch area or from home.
Yep.
As soon as a human player interacts with that model, then it comes back, it's relaunched, but it can do whatever it wants to from the launch area and home. Yep. And a couple of coaches were like, oh, really? I didn't know that. So that's one that I've been trying to get word out. That, again, don't read too much into the rules. And so that's one that may pop up. And I can see again that this field for a number of the missions can be
a little close.
I can see that happening a few times.
I have a question about launch area.
Yes.
One of the teams I saw was trying to launch with part of their robot hanging into the blank space next to it, the home space or whatever it's called on that side.
Mhm.
They can't,
Can they
they've
have
got,
anything at all hanging into that space?
Nope.
nope. Everything has to be in that pie-shaped launch area. And remember, the launch area has the 12-inch cap for inspection. Once the inspection of the equipment is complete and they start setting up for the match, that 12-inch boundary ceiling goes away.
Yep.
So that's an infinite tall volume on the launch area. But yeah, they can't. Now in the past, we've seen wires hanging over. If it's a minor hangover, you should try and correct or have your referees correct that hangover so that they're starting completely in. But that's one where benefit of the doubt, angles of where you're standing versus what the kids are seeing, there's a little leeway for benefit of the doubt for minor wire hangover is what I'll call it. If it's major wire hangover, then that's where don't let them start and all that. Since we're talking about that, remember that there are those teams that are doing their side alignments, and once they press the robot and it starts leaving that launch area or moving through the launch area, they give it a little bit of a tweak. Remember that technically that's an interruption. The robot comes back, they have to restart it. In the hype of the matches, that's a tough one to have the teams, especially the inexperienced teams, interrupt, stop it, relaunch it, and all that. Have a discussion with the teams. But remember, by them nudging it, chances are they're going to defeat trajectory as it is. I see more times than not that is a failing mission if they tap it on its way out. But again, that's one where remind your referees to just have that conversation with the teams, while the robot is out running around, and say, next time we're going to bring that robot back, and then do it. So any other launch area start type questions? All right. One other mission that I wanted to kind of put out there as a thought piece is I've had a couple of teams that one actually asked me about it, and I kind of gave them the standard pat answer of I don't see anything in the rules that prohibits that kind of action, and that is that center light show tower, and you've got the two levers that the robots are having difficulty lifting up the levers, but that top spins very freely. And so if a robot were to have something that spins the top in order to bring that lever up, is that acceptable? Again, there's no, in any of the missions, there's no method for how the scoring needs to be accomplished. It's just where is the scoring position at the end of the match. So in that case, it's like that's one of the loopholes. Yeah.
Now, one of the clarifications was very specific that you had to move the lever.
Yes. Or the lever has to be completely, and that's one of the updates is the Mission 5 augmented reality.
Yep.
Teams attempting the mission should prepare to rotate the orange activation lever the full amount. So again, and that goes to the other aspect. Keep in mind your definitions: completely versus partly. So completely in, completely rotated, completely situated. I can't remember all of the completely's, but in, on, all of those things. There are a number of missions that the levers have to be completely rotated. So that's it doesn't say how you have to rotate it. They just have to be rotated. So
Mhm.
again, there are multiple ways to interact with the model that I have experienced that allows you to not rotate the handle to activate it some other way, and the handle is going to end up in the completely rotated position.
Mhm.
So that's something to keep in mind, and you know, again, not make those assumptions. Let's see, one of the other another one that came up in the scrimmage was on the Mission 04, the masterpiece model. The team was delivering a group of audience members, the expert, and the masterpiece model with an attachment, with basically a strategic storage device, a box that they push out and deliver to that museum area. The question became, how is it scored? And when I looked at what they had done the first time, they had just put everything in the box and moved it. And of course, there is the box contacting the the pedestal. And so again, the blue text specifies that to score the bonus at the end of the match, which is the art piece completely supported by the pedestal, the art piece may only be touching the pedestal, and the pedestal may not be touching any team equipment except for the art piece. So that's one that if the art piece is at least partially in the museum target area, they can get 10 points, but they can't get the bonus of 20 if they employ that kind of delivery tactic. So the team came up with some other method to where they're delivering the box, and at the same time they're pushing the pedestal with the art piece on it. And at the very end, they make sure the two are separated, which works. And there aren't a whole lot of missions that have that equipment. And I wanted this is where I wanted to kind of share my screen, but because of the way my system is going, if you have the access to the Google Drive, and it looks like my Zoom meeting just stopped. Can you guys still hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good. So the in the Google Drive, I've posted a score sheet where I've gone in and I've added some blue text on a couple of the missions where it shows the equipment can't touch, or some of the other the team equipment cannot be touched in the immersive say again.
Which file?
It's one of the score sheets, and
You go.
it's the score sheet that has my initials at the end of the file name.
Okay, I think Rick is ahead of me.
Yeah, I put it up.
Okay, thank you. And my just so you know, my Zoom meeting says it's not responding, and I have no visual cues now. So if there are any hand raised, I'll let Elaine kind of help me out in that regard.
You got it.
Okay, and now it's coming back. Like I said, I've got a wonky system, right? All right. Other things there you go. Yeah, so that's as you can see, there's not a whole lot. Mission 9, the camera does not include the string. So if the string is in the camera area, but the camera is not, that is a no score. And I've seen that happen a couple of times. So other than that, one of the other things that I wanted to bring up was a post that I got, or an email I got from Emily Locke, who's working with her team, and she's noticed in playing around with the electronic scoring and all that, when you look at that audience delivery mission 14, you've got the number of audience members completely in the target destination. You can circle however many of those, and then the number of destinations with at least an audience member completely in it. In some of the scoring pages, you can actually have 0 and as a mark. And this one, it just shows 1, but there are some scoring sheets that have 0, and in the Event Hub scoring sheet, it shows 0 as an option. When the refs are scoring that, if they make any number in that first audience member scoring, number of audience members completely in the target destination, they need to at least have at least one destination selected. If they have 0, the team will still get the points for the audience members, but they won't get the extra 5 for each destination they're in. And to add insult to injury on that one, the software does not highlight that to the scorer as they're making that score, going, hey, this doesn't compute, this fails a logic test. So that's another one where when you're having your referee meeting in the morning before the tournament, stress to the referees, if they're delivering the audience members, make sure you're filling that one out accurately, because it could, you know, that's at least a 5-point swing if they've got, say, 2 audience members in a target destination. That's 10 points, and it's in one destination, so that's 15 points. If they select 0, then they're taking 5 points away from that team. So that's that's a key logic issue that I wanted to put out tonight. All right, what other questions or thoughts might any of you have?
I'm good, sir.
Awesome. Okay, I will kind of stress one more time. Most of you have been doing this for a couple of years now, and last year we talked about it. I think year before we talked about it as far as the gracious professionalism score. And remember, we're really looking for the average of the tournament should be, most teams are scoring a 2. Rarely are you going to get a team that falls into the 1 category. Although I have done that a couple times, even at state. So it's not out of the question, but use.
There's no 1.
Yeah, so it's either 3 is average, 2 is
3 is
below average, 4 is
correct.
above. Yeah.
Thank you for that correction, Emily. And Brad. Yeah, and then if they exceed, they've really got to do something dynamic to exceed. And especially with younger referees, the high school referees, who really like to praise the kids and pump them up. You know, they want to give that 4 or the 5, the higher score, and we want to control that. You know, we don't want every team easily able to score the higher. So every team should be pretty well locked into that accomplished. And it's really through an act of really something exceptional that they get the exceptional score. So you know, I think we're settling into kind of the routine on that. So I think that covers the main points that I wanted to cover. And again, this is more a chance for you all to ask any questions, seek clarification. And again, you know, the kind of the end goal is that we're all on the same sheet of music as we're scoring and as we're calling the shots and all that. So please don't hesitate to raise a what if or a question as we're going through here. And as I'm going through my notes and making sure I didn't miss anything.
Are the boundaries a little more nebulous with locations, or for example, the museum, it's got the steps, and then is that in?
Yeah, when I look at the field this year, it's very colorful and very chaotic. And so that's a great point, Dan. Thanks for bringing that up. All of the scoring areas have the cream color boundary around them. And I'll cite the update. That was one of the first updates that showed the target area for the camera. And it shows the target area of the camera includes that cream color border around it. So when you look at all of the scoring areas, that cream color border is not so obvious, but once you look at it, is very obvious within all the color and all that. So that is kind of your target for your Mod 1 Mark 0 eyeball calibration to make sure that the scoring is accomplished. So does that answer or clarify for you, Dan?
Yeah, sort of. It just seems a little more abstract
It is.
than in the past.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that good solid line.
Yes. I guess it allows us to give benefit of the doubt a little bit easier. I don't know. I guess we'll see how it plays out.
Have there been any issues? Have there been any tournaments yet?
There have not.
Okay, so there's no experience out in the field.
Not in Arizona.
Not in Arizona, yeah.
No, Elaine, have you heard anything from
I
your?
think there were a few before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
I think there were.
But you haven't received any feedback or any? Yeah.
No. So this document, Rich, that you had me add, this is the FLL Masterpiece Notes for Referees. That document is your own personal notes, right?
Correct. And yeah, let's go ahead and talk about that real quick.
Okay.
So there is a file, and maybe someone can share that. I'm not going to go into the full details on it, but for most of you that were around last year, I think I shared it with you. Just kind of my personal kind of thought pieces and kind of referee guidance. Most of which we've talked about tonight at some point or another. And yeah, my system is being really stupid.
And the link I just put in chat should take you to that PDF on the Google Drive, which you can then either view online or download it. And do you want me to share it, Rich?
Sure, if you want. And while that's coming up, one of the other things you'll see in that directory is I put together for kickoff the Masterpiece experts slide, and it kind of highlights that the experts start at various places around the field. I've given that to a lot of the coaches, and really cued them in that you need to make sure your experts start in the right place and go to the right place for the scoring. So really pay attention to that. That was also highlighted in one of the challenge updates
Yeah.
as well. So hopefully everyone's seeing that. So this document that Elaine just shared is that head referee notes. Feel free to download it, take it with you, whatever. It's got my contact information, obviously, and then like I said, it has kind of the big picture type of things. Again, all of it is in the rule books. There's some of my wording, hopefully to clarify. I don't know, maybe it's confusing. Hopefully it's more clarifying than confusing.
So I just read your Rule D. And if you look actually in the quiz, the robot quiz this year, they say that the techs are allowed to touch the jigs.
So yeah, and that's when you look at it, the jig isn't moving.
Right.
So they can't keep anything from moving. So if it's something that's going to be moving on launch, they can't put their hand on it.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
if sometimes I've seen jigs that move,
Okay.
And so that's one, they can
Okay.
hold the jig up against the wall
Yep,
to prevent it from moving. But if it's one of those jigs that interacts with the robot on start, they can't hold that.
they can't, yeah, they can't like let it go and have it push the robot or something, yeah.
Right.
Okay,
right.
sure, okay.
Yep, yep.
Yeah, that was, I got it now.
One of the other things, and I can't remember what I put in there, remember that a jig, because it's not moving, it can extend outside of the launch area.
Yep,
So the where is it? I don't think.
Jig?
Yeah, all equipment or models launching are completely in the launch area. So anything that the robot is going to take with it is completely in. So
Yep.
that's equipment and models.
yep.
And go ahead and scroll down some lane. Already talked about all that stuff. Already talked about all those guys. Light show audience delivery. I hit. Yep. And then the last one is just kind of the other stuff we've talked about in the past. Yeah, so I think that covers all my talking points. Unless there are other discussion points that you all have in mind.
I don't know where this team's gonna end up, Rich, but do you remember the motor the wind-up motor?
Hmm.
That one team was thinking about utilizing. So just in case one of the referees on the call ends up with this team, just so that they know what the decision was.
Yep, perfect. So early on in the season, we had a team ask, and I didn't see the video, but they tried to send it to me. They launched the robot, and as part of the launch sequence, it flicks something over into the other launch area, which triggers a reaction and a model to be delivered. So kind of some sort of, I don't know if it was
Bank shot.
rubber band wound up. So, yeah. And, I was actually talking to the coach at the FRC state tournament. He came up to me and was asking me about it. And yeah, it's it's a stored energy device that's all Lego rubber bands. And it's not one of the typical that's prohibited. So they've concocted some sort of trigger action device that releases some rubber bands to send some, I don't know if it's an audience member or if it's something out there to do something. And they were asking if that was acceptable. And as long as it's the robot that launches whatever piece over to the other side to then trigger that action, that's completely acceptable. And I'd love to see that in action.
Yeah. If one of you has it, take a video.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But what if it started at 2 minutes and 29 seconds?
Ooh. You score at 2:30.
You do score at 2:30, and I do not recall seeing any wording that that the scoring is complete when everything comes to rest, like we have in FTC and FRC at certain times. So that's a good question.
That's a good question.
I would say if it's a trigger effect, then it's like the robot. You stop the robot at the buzzer, and whatever object is in motion stops at the buzzer. So if the score was not done at the buzzer, then it's not scored. Does anybody see any wording that would invalidate that logic?
The only thing is they've explicitly outlawed any wind up kind of things, right?
I looked at that and
Look for it. It's been there in past years. We could not find it this year. Did you find it, Brad?
No, I
And-
thought it was there. Maybe it's a Mandela thing where I assumed it was there.
No, it's been there.
Yes.
it has been there in the past, but it's not there this year.
We
Holy cats,
specifically
okay.
went looking for it and we could not find it.
Okay.
Anybody finds it, just know that this team has been told it's okay, so long as the robot runs it, but we could not find, it's been there in the past.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not
Yeah,
there.
and it's generally in the equipment section. So
Right.
for the equipment, and it does not have it this year.
Yeah,
Again, and the stipulation I made to the coach was if you're using a rubber band, it cannot be your Staples brand rubber band. It's got to be a Lego brand rubber band because that's number one of that equipment.
How do I tell a Lego rubber band, by the way? I'm not sure I can tell.
They're pretty easy to tell. If it looks like a standard rubber band,
it's
chances are it's not a Lego
Not
rubber band.
Lego.
they're
The
black
Lego rubber
and
band is,
yellow.
there you go.
Yeah, and they're usually they're like shiny and they're round. They're
Round.
not flat like a store bought one.
Okay. I'll have my daughter with me.
Yeah.
She'll tell me. Wow, yeah, I can't find it. Yeah, no other electric motors, but they didn't say anything about windup.
Right.
Okay. I want to see that.
I do too. Take a
Oh,
minute.
one of the other, since we're talking about equipment that has come up, and I think it's general knowledge for any of us who have been doing anything before, but just a reminder that teams can have as many robots as they want to bring into the tournament as they want. They can have 3 different robots, but just each match they have to have one robot. So they may have 2 robots that alternate. One is a practice, the next one goes to match 1, the practice one is match 2, and then the one that was first is now on the 3rd match. They can do that. They just can't bring them both to the table when it's time for their match.
Now, I had a lot of people trying to bring, last year anyhow, trying to bring their computers to the table.
Yes, I saw that a couple of times, and so good good comment there, Brad.
Yeah.
Yeah, that seems to be getting more and more of the trend. During all the tournaments should have that period where the head referee gets to talk to the coaches during the coaches meeting. So head referees just make note to remind the coaches that they cannot bring the laptops.
Mhm.
And that reminds me of another point that I wanted to bring up that I saw kind of propagate throughout the season last year is coach involvement at the tables during the match.
Yep.
And so remember that during the gameplay, during the matches, the coach is a cheerleader. The coach is not telling the team what to do. Exactly. The coach should be one of the kids. So I really want to stress that at all the tournaments is that coaches, we want to hear you encourage the teams, but we don't want you telling them and giving them direction.
Now, I've had really good luck putting the coaches in a box somewhere.
Yes.
It helps a lot, but I think.
And that's what I do. Depending on the layout, like at Microchip last year, we had the coaches actually behind the barrier that was, the caution tape or the barriers that are put out. We had the coaches stay back there because it was so tight in the competition area. At some venues where it's an open gymnasium, I've actually located the coaches' corners, coaches' boxes, about probably 4 to 6 feet away
Yep.
from the corner of the table.
Yep.
And then there,
Speaking as a coach, though, it's really, you want to see this, you want to see the match, though.
exactly.
But I can't even see the match, and that's horrible.
And that's where, you know, work with the tournament director to, you know, put yourself in the position of the coach and, okay, where can I put a coach's box that is away from the kids, but close enough that I can see what's going on so that I can give them some feedback post match on how they could have done things better, because that is important, or take video.
Yeah.
So yeah, but really kind of stress, and I've even gone as far with a couple of coaches that I know were becoming more and more vocal. I've actually walked over to them during the match and put myself between them and their team, and then while I'm watching the match, talking to the coach over my shoulder, reminding him or her that you need to cheer on the team and not give them direction.
Yeah.
At this point, they should be able to make those decisions on their own.
And I've actually,
I was gonna say, my trick is to not make eye contact with coaches at all when I'm on the floor. It works, and I just look at the kids, and I can have a coach over here, and then I only make eye contact with the team members.
And it's gotten to the point where I can point at a coach, and when I point at them and give them a look, they know the next step is I'm going to remove them from the coach's box.
so I've also made some exceptions because there's some really young teams that might fall apart.
Yeah.
And you got to let the coach calm them down, you know.
Yeah. And I think that's a good point, in that there is a difference between calming them down and coaching them.
Yes.
And, again, it's a fine line.
Great. Thank you.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
I appreciate your time, and
And